Hello, everyone. What is going on? It is day 4 of the launch of Honest to Greatness, and it's been such an exciting week. I am literally exhausted. I'm also going to go live on Instagram here. So I wanted to share, it helps if I have the camera pointed in the right direction. I don't know if this has happened to any of you, but there we go. That's better. So it is day 4 of the launch of Honest to Greatness as I'm recording this right now. And it's been a little overwhelming, not going to lie. The number of podcasts and radio and TV appearances that I've gotten to do have been incredible. I'm just now starting to get comments and emails from people saying, oh my gosh, I've cracked this open and it's so cool. This morning I woke up to an email from the assistant of an extremely big time CEO that said, he's going to dive in and read it and he's excited about it. And that's just so great because writing a book, let me tell you something. I was like all gung-ho to write it, and I'll tell you that story in a little bit, but it has been so hard. I have changed and edited the book, and the book has changed and edited me, and it's been a really soul-searching experience. I highly recommend it to anyone who has ever had an aspiration to write a book, but it is hard work, and sometimes it can feel like I'm just shouting in the dark. I guess I don't need this. So I'm going to put that down so I don't look like, that guy. So what I want to do today is walk you through Honest to Greatness. Like, what is it? What does it mean? Why did I sit down to write it? We're going to go chapter by chapter. I'm going to pull out some of the incredible stories and share them with you so that you can see what's inside the book, get a behind the scenes look at really everything I've gone through to get to this point, days after launch. I'm very grateful to report we, Honest to Greatness, premiered at the #1 spot for hot new releases on Amazon in 2 separate categories, which is just incredible. And I'm so grateful to everyone out there who's come and supported this mission. Because listen, this isn't just a book. I mean, we need more honesty in our society. I think you'll agree. And the first thing we need to do is wake up to this fact and be aware that honesty and dishonesty are really big things in our life that influence us, depending on, whatever we want to achieve. The first thing I want you to ask yourself, as we dive into this is, how honest are you? Be honest with yourself. How honest are you with who you really are? How well do you even know what's in your blind spots? How do you know what kind of things might be lurking in your own head that are defeating you by the millisecond, and you may not even realize that they're there? These are the types of things that the book deals with, from the macro of what's going on in our world to the micro. So let's start at the very beginning and talk about why write a book about honesty, right? And if I'm honest, I never set out to write a book about honesty. I never set out to speak about honesty, or frankly, even care about honesty. It was not on my radar at all. I sat down to write what I thought was a marketing book. And I guess I should back up even further from there. Why write a book? I talked earlier about what it means to really deeply understand what you want in life. And if I am honest about who I am an author. It's just in my DNA. I've always had a book in me. I always knew that I was going to be an author, and to believe anything else would have been to trick myself into thinking that, basically just lying to myself. Now, the reason I figured that out goes all the way back to 17-year-old me. See, there was a point in time when I had pretty lofty aspirations. At 17, I was a very highly trained figure skater, actually, and had Olympic hopes. And there was something else going on around that age, which is that I was starting to apply to colleges, and many of my family members had gone to Harvard. I grew up outside of Boston. There was only one school I had ever considered, and that was Harvard. So I was on this path, when I was 17. And unfortunately, by 18, figured out that I was not good enough to ever get anywhere close to the Olympics. Just couldn't hold my stuff together. I didn't have what it took. And I had to confront that and be honest with myself. And in addition, I applied to Harvard. Harvard sent me a nice letter back saying, thank you, but no thank you. And that was a devastating time. Maybe you've all had, this happen to you in your life when you've been on this one track and then all of a sudden you're on this other track. Like life just derails you and you're like, wait, how did I go from this to that? It can be devastating. Trust me, I know. Now, the good thing is, right out of college, it was 2008, I ended up starting a company. And it turns out when you have these big failures in your life and you have big chips on your shoulder, you can use those as fuel. And so I did, it really drove me through my 20s as my business partner and I started what was a video production company. And we grew that eventually into a multi-million-dollar multinational marketing agency. We had offices across the US and here in the US and Canada, and got into the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in the United States, which all sounds well and good until something terrible happened to me, which is that I turned 30. I don't know if this has happened to any of you. It was just a completely devastating time in my, again, in my life. And what I finally understood was that I had begun accepting a second best Peter, right? It was like, well, I missed the Olympics, missed Harvard, was never going to be the best version of myself. That ship has sailed. So I'm just going to be second best me. And for the second time in my life, I had to get really brutally honest once again with who I really was and what I really wanted, and to make some important changes in my life. And one of those things I had to realize was that I am an author. I can deny it, but I have a book in me and I am an author. So I, among other things, there were plenty of other things I had that I wanted to achieve. I wanted to be a TEDx speaker, so I got a TEDx talk. I wanted to write for Forbes and Inc. magazine, so I did and got articles picked up and eventually had a column in Inc. I decided I was stupid, needed an MBA, went back to Columbia University, got an MBA. Turns out I was right. I was very stupid. Now I'm still stupid, but a little smarter. And so back to, why write the book and how I got here, I sat down to write a book about marketing. Because over the course of our agency, we had worked with startups and local car dealers up to the Fortune 500 and even Warren Buffett himself. And I was always fascinated by this thing I could not explain. And I talk about this right in the introduction of the book, how confusing this was to figure out that some clients that we worked with, we went into their businesses and we talked to their customers and their employees, and we brought back all these insights and we showed them to the executive team. And the executive team looked at them and said, oh yeah, this is great. We got to do something about this. And they did. And they would get a 5 and 6 times ROI in their investment. They would love us and stay with us for years. And it was like, this is fantastic. Other clients, gave them the same love and care and attention, went into the frontline employees and the customers and unearthed all the insights and brought them back and gave them to the executives. And they would just blow up on the launch pad. They could not get out of their own way. They would descend into infighting and politics and bullshit. And I just remember sitting there thinking, these people are idiots. Now, that's not true. I was the idiot, right? No executive of $100 million company gets that way because they're stupid. What I ended up deciding was that they are dishonest in the ways that I describe it in the book. Now, this is all well and good. The real secret, what I'm not telling you, is how I figured out how it all clicked together. And that comes back to my own personal failure. When I turned 30 and realized I had not been honest with myself about what I really wanted. And when I matched that with what I had seen going on in my clients, I said, holy crap, it is the same thing. It all comes back to honesty. And we need to start with honesty, because if we're not honest about who we are and what we want and what it takes to get there, then we're going to succeed or fail at a life that we never even wanted in the first place. Very important, very powerful stuff. So in the introduction of the book, I set up, not that story, I tell that in chapter 4, but I set up the fact that we live in a very dishonest time, or so it seems. What I actually think is this: we live in a society that is increasingly transparent. If you look at, for instance, the horrendous murder of George Floyd, why did that spark such a global movement? Well, it's because we all saw it with our own eyes. See, today, everyone's walking around with a smartphone. Someone, somewhere, is recording what is really going on. And in that world, it will no longer pay to do anything but be honest and transparent. When you look at the scandals that have come out recently, I tell the stories of a couple of them. When you look at the scandals, the Wells Fargo fake account scandal, or Volkswagen, the diesel emission scandal, or the college admissions scandal, the truth comes out, people. The truth always comes out. That's why we have this phrase in the English language, right? And it's up to us to understand the environment that we operate in. It's a very transparent world that we're living in. We can go online, research anything about anyone. And in that world, why lie? Especially when not only do the CEOs and organizations in this book not lie, they use honesty strategically. They use honesty as a strategy. They weaponize it to achieve success. This book premiered at the #1 hot new release on Amazon for business ethics, and that's wonderful. But this is not an ethics book. Like, I'm a capitalist. I love money. I have an MBA. Like, I'm all about the money, people. This is a book about how do you make money in a completely transparent world. And I'm going to get into the stories here in a little bit and show you how it translates directly to business success and outcomes, how it translates directly to more profitability, how it translates to you being able to transform your life, all using the power of strategic honesty. So, in the introduction, I do a wonderful job setting that up. And I'm so grateful that Ms. Sharon Lechter, who is the co-author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, wrote my foreword. Sharon is incredible, and she does a great job at setting up the same thing that I just talked about. We live in a transparent world. So if you believe that we live in a transparent world, then the question is, what do we do about it? And how do we get to higher levels of understanding of how to operate in such a world? Well, in the very first chapter, the first chapter is called Fraud is Our Fault. Fraud is our fault, because it is. We can only control so much in our life, right? But one thing we can control is our own mind share, right? The things that we think, the things that we believe, the habits and patterns that make up our lives. And we need to understand that we lead ourselves astray when we don't take personal responsibility for the things we see, hear, think, feel. Two of the most powerful questions, how do you weaponize this? How do you use it? I'm going to tell you right now. Two of the most powerful questions you can ask about honesty is that honest? Is that true? And how do I know? You can imagine that you've saw something on the news, right? Or your great aunt Betty posts something on Facebook, or you have a thought in your mind. Just stop and ask yourself, is that true? And how do I know? Because unless we stop and ask ourselves if it's even true in the first place, we might be moving forward based on complete bullshit, right? Some lie that someone's telling us or that we've told ourselves that is preventing us from achieving what we really want to achieve. Okay. And this happens all the time. Now, every time we watch a news show and we give credence to a headline that's not true, or we don't dive behind the data, every time we click on a headline that's scandalous that we really shouldn't, someone's getting paid. And the more that happens, the more there's an incentive to mislead us, to steal our mind share, then the less the harder it's going to be for us to build a better world based on honesty and truth and transparency. That's the deal. So fraud, as I say in the very first chapter, is our fault. And I tell some incredible stories about, for instance, Theranos, right? Theranos was the blood testing company. They invented this box that was supposed to test your blood. Never worked. Elizabeth Holmes, the CEO, basically lied to everyone and swindled otherwise pretty smart investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars. How did this happen? Well, we humans love to have social proof, right? We don't trust anything unless they've got, all these ratings on Facebook and TripAdvisor. We'll get into that in a moment. Or, okay, who else thinks this person's important? Okay, well, if they think they're important, then fine, right? As soon as I show you that Barbara Corcoran thinks this book is awesome, you instantly think to yourself, oh, maybe it is good, right? That's all it took. Now, maybe this book sucks, or maybe it's awesome, but that one thing, like, oh, a shark on Shark Tank thinks it's good, you have to be honest. It changed your mindset just a little bit. Maybe good, maybe bad, right? So what happens with investors frequently, and I cannot understand this for the life of me, is that they will wait to invest in a company until everyone else has invested in them. So think about that for a moment. Investors are in charge of finding the hottest new company to invest in first, so they make more money, right? And the way they do that, the way they be leaders, is to wait and look around at what their competitors are doing and copy them. Is it just me, or does that make absolutely no sense, right? There's something wrong here. And the fact of the matter is, once one important person thought, oh yeah, Elizabeth Holmes, she's cool, I'm going to invest in Theranos. Then the next investor, oh, well, they invested, so we'll invest. Those two invested, so we'll invest. And it just snowballs into bullshit up until a point where she literally lost her investors, some really smart people, hundreds of millions of dollars, because she simply swindled them out of it. That the pull of herd mentality is so strong, and we don't do a good enough job of talking about it, right? Of bringing it up and really being clear with people that it is pulling us astray. Let me tell you another great story that comes out of chapter 1 here, Fraud is Our Fault. And it's the story of The Shed, which for a long time was the #1 rated restaurant on TripAdvisor in the UK. This restaurant, for 6 months, it was like impossible to get a reservation. People would call and there'd be a busy signal, but finally this one young couple got through and got a reservation for opening night. So they get in the car, and they've told all of their friends that they got a reservation at The Shed. It is coveted. I mean, people just couldn't get it. They were the ones, okay? They're psyched. They're posting all over social media. They get in the car. They're driving there. They're driving through a pretty ordinary neighborhood in the UK and just in the London area. And, ordinary neighborhood, houses, residential. They thought, all right, this is a little odd, but this restaurant's supposed to be, it's different. It's new. It's exciting. So fine, we'll roll with it. They pull up. There are a couple other cars there, but otherwise pretty quiet. They get out of the car. They're looking around. And someone comes out from behind the house, looks sort of like they work there, says, oh, are you here for The Shed? They said, oh, yeah, we're here. So he said, okay, come with me. So they walk around the back of the house, and he sits them down at a table between this house and the garden shed. And, not totally glamorous. It's like picnic tables and chairs, but whatever, right? This couple's jazzed just to be there. They're snapping photos of the decor. They're taking pictures of the menu. Finally, after what seems like 30 minutes of being kind of ignored, but who cares, right? That's how these places roll sometimes. They finally get served their dinner. And, it wasn't all that good, but they had arrived. They had gotten there. They weren't going to let old bad food bother them. So they went home and they told everybody how amazing their experience was. They went back on TripAdvisor, said 5 stars. This place is awesome. Left a comment. Absolutely amazing, right? Well, here's the kicker. The Shed is not a restaurant. It's fake. Its owner, Uba Butler, has never cooked a meal in his life. The dinners tasted like frozen TV dinners because that's exactly what they were. This guy had basically gamed the entire TripAdvisor system and created a fake restaurant and built up 6 months of demand. And even after they were there, even after they tasted the crappy food, they still went back and rated the restaurant as excellent and told all their friends it was awesome. That is how powerful our herd mentality is. That's how powerful our desire for social proof is. It can kill us if we're not more diligent and more honest that, hey, this place sucks. I don't know why everyone says it's awesome, but it's not. But who wants to go against the crowd, right? Such a powerful story. Fraud is our fault, and we need to be much more diligent about how we run our lives and, of course, our businesses. So in chapter 2, and by the way, for those of you just joining, I'm Peter Kozdoy, the author of Honest to Greatness. It is available right now. It's doing great. Thank you all so much for your support. Listen, buy this book for yourself, but more importantly, buy it for the leaders in your life to help them wake up, to help them understand how honesty works, how honesty produces results. I'm going to tell you so many case studies of big companies, small companies, entrepreneurs who crushed it using something we learned when we were 4 years old. Honest to Greatness. Get your copy, share it. I've had people email me and be like, Peter, I got 12 copies. I'm sending to all my team. Tomorrow, somebody's coming by to socially distant, of course, drop off their copies for me to sign. They're sending one to the CEO of Goldman Sachs. They're sending one to presidents of other organizations they know. Awesome. Thank you so much to the folks who do that. Thank you for your support, because this is a movement, people. We need to create a movement. And Brittany, I'm sorry I missed your comment, but I saw you were loving your book. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So far, the feedback on Amazon has been great. Go grab your copy of Honest to Greatness and share it. So let's talk about chapter 2. In chapter 2, I tell the complicated story of why we lie. Why do we lie? Why are people so dishonest? What I want you to understand is that our society empowers dishonesty, or it has, right? Things have changed, remember. We're living in a very weirdly transparent society now, but it wasn't always that way. I take you all the way back to ancient Egypt in chapter 2, and I tell the story about the feather of Ma'at. So if you think of yourself as an ancient Egyptian, right? Like cool feathers in your hair, and you do the walk and the whole thing. Imagine you came out of the market and, it's the desert, right? So you get momentarily blinded by the desert sun, and you trip over your feet and you go ass over tea kettle all the way down these stone steps. You land in a pile of unripe melons so hard, and you crack your noggin open, right? Dead. In the next moment, according to Egyptian mythology, you would enter into the Hall of Two Truths. And in the Hall of Two Truths, you would see this scale. And on one end of the scale would be your beating heart, literally your heart from your chest. Remember, you died. And on the other end would be the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth. Ma'at was the goddess of truth and honesty and all transparency, all this great stuff. And the whole idea was, in ancient Egypt, they wanted you to build a society of nice, moral people. So it was basically like, hey, if your heart comes in balance with the feather, then you lived a really good ethical life and you deserve to go on to the afterlife, and the doors would open and on you would go to the afterlife. But if your heart was heavier than the feather, then you would be instantly devoured by the half crocodile god Amit, and you would die forever. You wouldn't go to the afterlife. And this was a big, big deal in ancient Egypt. Now, a couple centuries go by, and the Amun priests get wise to this, right, in ancient Egypt. And they figure out, hey, we can probably sell the Disney Fast Pass to the afterlife here, maybe make some money. So they literally start to sell special scrolls. And the scrolls have inscriptions on them. And if you get to the Hall of Two Truths and you weren't exactly moral, then you could just recite the incantation and boom, Disney Fast Pass your way to the afterlife. Now, the signal that sent society was, you can do anything you want to make money. And at the end of the day, you're going to get into the afterlife anyway, because you can buy it. Now, the difference then and now is that back in ancient Egypt, or I talk about ancient Rome and a lot of the other societies that have been built over the millennia, we didn't know. We didn't have information. The Amun priests had the information. We didn't have the information. And in a world with imperfect information, we call it information asymmetry. The person with the information always has the power. Makes sense, right? Fast forward to today. We all have information. We all have phones. We all have a Google password, right? And we can look people up. We can look companies up. We can see now whether an organization is polluting the environment in Africa or in Asia or wherever. This is a whole new world. And in that world, as I said earlier, it just doesn't pay to do anything but be honest and transparent. But it's important, as I talk about in chapter 2, which is, I'll show you, the complicated story of why we lie, okay? In chapter 2, I talk about, we have to understand society a little better and understand how we've mixed up money and morality, because things have changed. Things have changed. And if we don't understand how they've changed, then we're going to get left behind. What most people don't realize, when they talk about capitalism and our capitalistic society, right? Back in 2008, we were ready to tear capitalism down. All capitalism was, originally, according to its Scottish philosopher founder, Adam Smith, was that people would get together and mutually benefit from trade. That's all it meant. I have something that you want, you have something that I want, so we're going to trade it and we're both going to be better off. And because we do that with groups, we're all going to be better off. That was the original intention of capitalism. But just like those Amun priests, over time, capitalism has been twisted and made into a profit motive, and we're going to excuse our polluting the environment and mistreating workers over here to make money over there. Now we can research that stuff, huh? I mean, we know. And with more information, humans always make different decisions. We do things differently. We act differently in the dark than we do in the light. It's just human behavior 101. Now, there's actually an entire movement around this idea, and it's called conscious capitalism. Conscious capitalism, it's a movement. It's also an organization, global organization of folks from the head of Whole Foods down to other CEOs around the world who agree that we need to go back to a conscious capitalism model, a stakeholder capitalism model. That's a fancy way of saying instead of putting money over everything, we need to make sure that the business supports everyone. It's good for the community. It's good for the workers. It's good for the partners and vendors. It's good for the shareholders, of course, but it's also good for the environment. This is all coming into play now, and study after study has shown that companies, that consumers, particularly young consumers, millennials, Gen Z, we really care about these things. We will go out of our way to patron a business, to give them our business, if they are a good company, a moral company. They help people. They don't pollute the environment, so on and so forth. We are actively researching now and making buying decisions based not only on the product or service we need, but also the philosophies and actions of the company behind it. People, this is a big deal. This has not happened forever. It's not happened in decades. Hold on one moment. This has never happened before, right? This is new. We need to realize that in this environment, people are going to glassdoor.com. They're going to Google. They're looking up what your employees say. That's part of the premise here. And that's what I talk about in chapter 2, and take you back to what capitalism really was meant to be. Now, before we turn on to chapter 3, the people are hopping in and out of this live stream. We are in launch week for Honest to Greatness. And I just want to thank everyone out there who has been so supportive of me, who has posted on social media, who has gone and bought copies on Amazon. I had someone the other day said they bought 50 copies to hand out to an association that they're a member of. They want all the leaders there to know. I've had people booking me for speaking gigs, all around the world, virtually, of course. And it's just such a pleasure to be able to share this content with everyone. So if you haven't already, please go pick up your copy of Honest to Greatness. Even Barbara Corcoran on Shark Tank thought it was awesome. And we talked about social proof and herd mentality earlier, so don't pretend that's not a big deal. All righty. So let's go on to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is about giving power to the people. In fact, the title of chapter 3 is Giving Power to the People Will Make You Rich. And I profile an organization called Just Capital. Just Capital is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit. And every year it comes out with the Just 100, which are the 100 most just companies as Just Capital lists. But here's the thing. The criteria to get on the Just 100 has nothing to do with what the people at Just Capital think. They actually poll the American people and ask them, what's important to you? Do you care about workers' rights? Do you care about wages? Do you care about keeping money here domestically versus around the world? Do you care about environmental rights? What do you care about? And the American people respond. And based on what we, the consumer public, think, the Just 100 ranks its 100 most just, honest, transparent companies. And here's the thing. Here's the amazing thing about that list. You would think that taking care of society and taking care of communities and protecting the environment and paying people more would cost a lot of money. But it turns out that the companies on the Just 100 have a higher return on equity than their peers. They're actually making more money than their peers who are doing all those bad things in the name of making more money. You guys see how crazy this is? This is a sign that consumer trends are shifting, like I was talking about earlier. This is a sign that people are doing their research, that they don't want to support organizations that are soulless or dishonest. In fact, there was a recent study that came out showing that young people, and really all age groups, but especially young people, expect CEOs of private companies to take a stand on public issues. Think about how weird that is, right? Talk about stakeholder capitalism. We are now at a place where we don't trust our public sector government to do the right thing or enough to help us. So we now expect the private sector to pitch in and help. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that if you're a private sector company, you've got to make some choices, about what you're doing for your environment, what you're doing for your people and your vendors and suppliers and so on and so forth. It's just remarkable. I mean, listen, I've got some numbers here, right? So, in the book, I make the shocking case for being a just organization. I spell out some incredible statistics. Let me read you a few. Companies who make the Just 100 list, on average, pay their median employees 33% more than other companies. That's a lot. Employ an average 38% more workers here than abroad. Have 0 FDA fines, donate 3.8 times more to charity than their peers, emit 72% less greenhouse gases per dollar of revenue, use 80% less fossil fuel per dollar of revenue, and it doesn't cost a dime. Here's the statistic. Just 100 companies deliver an average 8% higher return on equity. Now, 8 may seem like a low number, but we're talking 8% of like $1 billion. That's a lot of money. And did you hear the statistics I just reported on how they're actually spending more on many of these things and still earning more because people are rewarding them, and because not only are they getting honest about how they need to behave, they're getting honest about other things too. We're going to talk about that when we get to part 2 of the book. It's a remarkable time what's going on now. I was in this is my I did 9 podcasts like this, Wednesday, 9 Thursday. This one's like number 7 today. I have one after. And, time after time, it's just remarkable talking about how society has changed, and it really has. And we need to be much more aware of how right now we have an opportunity to use honesty, not to be ethical and moral. Like, I think everyone should be ethical. That's all well and good. But I care about the money. I care about the results. I want to be very clear about that. Honesty is a technique, a strategy to earn more money. Just Capital proves it. Those statistics prove it. It's incredible. So, gosh, before we go on to chapter 4, and I'm sorry, you're gonna hear me like tire out on this, right? Because I am exhausted from this week. But if you're just tuning in, thank you so much for all the support you've given on the launch of Honest to Greatness. If you have not gone to Amazon to pick up your copy, please do. It would mean the world to me. Get one for yourself, get one for others. In fact, I have an entire bonus page at peterkozloy.com/bonus. And if you buy 3 or more copies, you get all kinds of goodies, classes I've taught in the past, one-on-one time with me. In fact, if you buy enough copies, I will fly you and a friend to New York City, put you up in a luxury hotel, and even take you out to dinner. I was going to say steak dinner, but if you're vegan, then, I like vegetables as much as the next guy. So it would be great to see you. But anyway, head over to peterkozloy.com/bonus and grab copies for your team. Grab copies for your bosses. Someone reached out to me from American Express. Peter, I'm going to hook you up with the managers here. Amazing. Somebody's going to send one to the CEO of Goldman Sachs. Incredible. The CEO of Walgreens Boots Alliance. This executive assistant reached out this morning, said, Peter, the CEO is absolutely going to dive into this. This is fantastic. This is a movement, people. This is a movement. Be part of the movement, because look around you. We live in a society that has forgotten that we need to be honest with each other. And it's led to divisiveness, and it's led to a misunderstanding about what achieves outcomes. And oftentimes it can feel pretty hopeless. When I tell people I write a book about honesty, they snicker. They're like, really? Like, honesty is the best policy? So yeah, it is. It's helped the CEOs in my book achieve wildly profitable, industry-dominating outcomes. And I can't wait till we get to part 2 in a few minutes here, so I can tell you some of those stories. They're incredible. But we're up to chapter 4, which is the central framework of the book. And the central framework of the book is what I call the hourglass of honesty. Now, yes, it's my framework. I invented it. No, it wasn't easy. I had to discover it by having failure after failure in my own life and business that forced me to understand how it works. Because I used to think that it worked like this. Okay. As you can see, that's not that's not an hourglass, right? That's sort of an upside down diamond. And I want to walk you through how this works, because if you can figure out this one framework, if you can just learn this one key framework, you can change your business, change your life. Okay. First, we need to get honest about what I call the community. Okay. In other words, what's going on in the world around you? What's going on in society at large? We live right now in a pandemic of COVID-19, a pandemic of dishonesty, right? And I think that's important to note. We live in a very weird time. We live in a time of continued inexplicable racial injustice, gender bias, gender fluidity. Some of these things are things that we've never even thought about before as a society, okay? But we cannot put our heads in the sand. No matter whether we're frontline employees or middle managers or CEOs or entrepreneurs, doesn't matter. We operate in this broader environment and we can't ignore it. We need to be sensitive to it in some way, shape, or form. And by getting honest about those big trends and what's going on, we can actually capitalize on these waves and ride them. One of the best examples of this was Blockbuster and Netflix. Tell I'm getting tired, right? Happy Friday, everyone. Blockbuster and Netflix. Everyone knows how Blockbuster and Netflix ended up, that essentially Netflix put Blockbuster out of business. What they don't realize is that Blockbuster had years and years and opportunity after opportunity to get honest about how consumer behaviors were changing. Oh, they didn't want to go into stores anymore. They don't want to pay all those late fees. Who would have thought? They love getting DVDs through the mail. Now, this should have been obvious to anyone who was getting honest at the level of community, right? But unfortunately, the very smart, well-meaning executives at Blockbuster were unable to get honest about that fact. Not only that, but they were unwilling to change their minds, even in the face of being wrong. That's what's most egregious. That's what's most harmful. You ask, what does honesty mean? Well, it means a lot more than just being honest with people. We're going to get to that in a moment. But part of the definition is allowing yourself to admit when you're wrong, being willing to admit fault, being ready to change. That's part of being honesty too, especially when we're going to use it to achieve outcomes, right? So that brings me to the second level, as I talk about in chapter 4, the level of the others, second level down. Now, we need to be honest with and about the others around us. What do I mean by that? Well, it's one thing to be honest with people, and sometimes we do need to be honest with them. Sometimes we just need to level with people. Hey, I messed up. I'm sorry. That was really shitty of me to do. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. In fact, we're going to tell a couple stories of big companies that use that technique to thrive, to crush it. But other times, we need to be honest about others. I've had a couple people now tell me oh, Peter, you wrote a book about honesty. That's so great. I wish people were more honest. I'm so honest. I just tell it like it is all the time. And I say, well, you're probably just an asshole. You're probably just a jerk. I mean, that may be true that you're brutally honest, but to what end? What is honesty good for? That's the question. One of the CEOs in my book makes a great point. He says, if you're flying in an airplane and the pilots come over the intercom and they say, well, folks, we've never seen storm clouds like that before, so please put your seatbelts on. I'm not quite sure if we're going to get through this. Is that honest? Yeah, it's honest. But is it helpful? No. Honesty is only as good as the trust it creates. Any parent will tell you that telling your kids the complete, unadulterated, honest truth all the time is probably a really bad idea. It's probably even harmful. And using honesty as a strategy is no different. So sometimes, yes, we need to be honest with people, but other times, most times, we need to be honest about them, about their biases, about how big their ego is, about their own self-limiting beliefs as a leader, or what might be in their blind spot, right? And this is where empathy comes into play. This is where some of the techniques I'll teach you in part 3 later on come out of, being honest about the people around you, how they're thinking, how they're feeling, how they might look at the same data you look at, and you come to 2 different conclusions, right? And you're left thinking wow, they're so stupid. They're not stupid. We need to be honest about how other people think and how different their thought processes are from your own. Finally, the third level that I talk about in the central framework, the hourglass of honesty, is getting honest with yourself. Getting honest with yourself. That's the most difficult part. But it's critical. It's the most difficult, but most critical. We need to learn how to get more honest with and about ourselves, with our own biases, with our own self-limiting beliefs, with our own ego. Oh gosh, no one has a bigger ego than I do. I think my wife's in the next room overhearing me. I'm sure she's nodding her head emphatically. I've had to learn how much of that ego existed in my blind spot and how to pull it out. By the way, that's a work in progress, still learning, right? That's the whole idea. People get mad at me when I come onto these things and I'm like, I don't even think I'm that honest. And it's true. But think about this. If you're going to stand there and tell me that you are self-aware and that you are an honest person, I know right off the bat that you're not self-aware or honest. That's not how it works. How this works is admitting, yeah, I probably have a long way to go. I probably have a lot more to be aware about. I probably have a lot more to be honest about. That's the point. That's getting honest with yourself. And when we get to part 3 and we talk about the Johari window, we're going to talk about techniques to do that, to get honest with yourself. But one thing I'll tell you right off the bat is it's very difficult to do alone. It's nearly impossible to do alone. That's why I participate in a forum with other entrepreneurs that I can be brutally honest and open and vulnerable with and get the reflections back to hear myself talk, to hear where I might be going wrong, and why I run forums for other entrepreneurs. Because with 100% confidentiality, if we have a place to put things that might be in our blind spot on the table, bring them into the light, examine them, that's how we can begin to deal with them and make incredible transformations in our life and business. Here's the thing. Here's why this process works, and here's why it turns into an hourglass, okay? Once you're honest about what's going on in the community, what's going on in the world around you, and then you're honest with and about the others around you, and the others around you can be your colleagues and employees, clients, right? Friends, family. And once you're honest with and about yourself, you are fundamentally changed. If you think about it, honest you is a different person than dishonest you. Honest you has different hopes and dreams and fears and aspirations and expectations and goals, right? If you're honest about what you really, really, really want, that's different. Just stop and think about that. What do you really, really want? What happens is once you've changed yourself, once you've transformed, you're in this context and you get honest on those 3 levels, you end up coming back out the other side. You end up transforming and changing the others around you. And that's how you can bend the community towards you and create industry dominating results in business and your life. We know this is true because we know that you're the average of the people you surround yourself with. So when you change the people around you, you eliminate toxic relationships, you find better clients, that's what produces results. That's the way to change your life. Company after company that we're going to talk about, we're going to go through all the case studies in part 2, have used this exact framework, the hourglass of honesty, to get deeply honest about what's going on, deeply honest with themselves, and to make transformations. I am in the transformation business, people. That's what honesty is all about. We can't transform ourselves unless we get honest first, and honest on all 3 levels. So, as you can see, as I took you through part 1, it is a journey. I mean, I say in the book, I take you on a journey of self-discovery, the likes of which you probably have never considered before, because this is powerful stuff. Powerful stuff to pause and think about, where are we as a society? What's my role in all of this? Where am I going? How am I being pulled and psychologically manipulated by the things I see and think and hear? It's just such a wonderful thing. And I've gotten so much positive feedback of people saying, Peter, I've read your book. I'm like 5 chapters in. And oh my gosh, I've never actually stopped to think about this stuff. And how was I operating? How was I running my life? And not even thinking about whether my assumptions were even true to begin with, whether what I wanted was even true to begin with, whether I was being honest with myself, honest with the people around me who probably already know the truth. And now they see that I'm a lying sack of shit, right? Powerful, powerful stuff. So, as you can see in part 1, I really take you, on a journey. And I want you to be aware of what honesty and dishonesty does in our lives and our society. And once you figure that out, I reveal that framework to you, and I tell you the story I told you earlier about how I turned 30 and had my own sort of crisis of dishonesty and had to revamp my life. It's never easy, but we need to get honest about what we like and don't like. And I talked a little bit about being persuaded into doing things because you think that will make you successful, or you think that will make you happy. I remember clearly, when we were at our height, my platform company, my marketing agency, we had offices in 3 states and 2 countries and lots of employees and clients around the world. And something always felt off. Something always felt uncomfortable about it. I didn't really want to go to meetings with a lot of people. I didn't really want to interact and manage them. I didn't really want to have to fly around to these offices. I don't even want to put pants on half the time. That's honest, right? This pandemic for me has been wonderful. I get to sit at home. I love my house. I'm sort of an introvert, and I get to talk to you through online. And once I'm done here, I get to go have dinner, and I don't have to spend time commuting and all this. This is wonderful for me. I love it, right? So, if I'm going to be honest, I need to be much more diligent about understanding that as an entrepreneur, because I can build my company any way I want. And any of you out there listening who have companies, you can build it any way you want. And in a life where you don't control much, you sure as shit control that. So do it. So that's part 1. In part 2, we have a lot of fun because we go through case study after case study in the book, showing you what honesty looks like. What does it look like and how does it work in sales, marketing, finance, management and operations, leadership, all of it. And there's so many fun stories in here. I'm gonna crack open chapter by chapter and show you some of them. But I just want to pause and say, we're almost 50 minutes in to our little live stream telethon here. If you have not gone to Amazon and picked up a copy of Honest to Greatness, please do. Buy a copy for you, buy a copy for your managers, for your employees. Talk about honesty, talk about these frameworks, talk about the techniques that I'm going to show you in chapter 3, because all of this stuff ties together. Whether you want to be better at sales and marketing, whether you want to be better at putting operations in your business, whether you want to be better at innovation, whether you want to be better at recruiting better talent, it all comes back to the same thing. It all comes back to honesty. Without honesty, none of those transformations can happen, because people are going to know you're full of shit. It's simple. I shouldn't have had to write a book about it, but I did. People have been so sweet. They've been emailing me and telling me, yeah, I got 5 copies, got 10 copies, got 50 copies. It's so phenomenal. I had someone say they bought a copy for their dog. I found that kind of weird because I find dogs to be pretty honest, but maybe the dog will enjoy it. I don't know. But point being, grab copies for your friends and family. It's such a help to me. And we're in week 1. We're in week 1 of the launch of Honest to Greatness. Everything that you buy, every copy you buy is really meaningful, because everyone looks at week 1 and says, do people care about this? Do people care about honesty? And I need your help. This is a movement, not just a book, but a movement. All right, so let's talk about chapter 5. In chapter 5, I hit you right where you want to be hit, which is in sales, right? How do you make more money and get more sales using honesty as a strategy? And I tell the story of young Charlotte McCourt. Charlotte was an 11-year-old Girl Scout. She still is. She's just not 11 anymore. And she was a disillusioned 11-year-old because she understood that sometimes there can be false advertising. In fact, she thought that the Girl Scouts of America had some false advertising in the way they marketed their cookies. By the way, I did reach out to the Girl Scouts of America for comment. They declined to comment, as you might imagine. So, being the little capitalist that she is, she wants to sell some Girl Scout cookies. She wants to sell some and send them overseas to Afghanistan, Iraq. This was some years ago. Fantastic mission, right? And so, again, being the capitalist that she is, she asks her father, who do we know that has a lot of money and buy cookies? He said, well, talk to my friend. He's a venture capitalist, right? VCs have a lot of money. So, without an introduction from her father, she shoots this guy an email, 11 years old, by the way. And she says, listen, sometimes there can be false advertisements out there, but I don't want to treat you that way. I'm going to be honest with you. Some of these cookies are really great. You should buy some. Others of these Girl Scout cookies suck and you should not buy them. So she came up with a rating scale between 0 and 10 and proceeded to rate each cookie flavor, and gave them little descriptions, calling some a gluten-free wasteland and others as flavorless as dirt, saying, don't buy these, they suck. Well, the recipient of that letter, being a venture capitalist, took a look at this and said, well, if only the entrepreneurs I invested in had this much honesty in their sales approach, we'd probably sell a lot more product and be a lot better off. Now, here's the interesting thing. Charlotte didn't have to do that, right? She could have just said, hey, will you buy some cookies? And maybe you would have bought, 20 boxes or 50 boxes. But instead, because the letter she wrote was so remarkable, so refreshingly honest, the letter got shared and shared and shared. It got shared so much that eventually Charlotte sold 30,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. 30,000. It crashed her website. And it's just a remarkable example of what can happen when we level with our clients, when we don't try to bullshit them, when we tell them, hey, here are the pros and cons of this product or service. I want you to know the truth because I want you to see that I'm trying to do the right thing here. And I want you to have the best experience possible. This is not that hard. And we've all had the experience of being with a salesperson and having the salesperson say, listen, if you bought this, it's more expensive. I make more money, but I really wouldn't do that if I were you. If you bundle this, this, and that, you'll save money. I think you'll be happier. It's all the features you really need. And what do we think to ourselves? We're like, oh, nice, right? Thank you for taking care of me. That's really cool. Why? Because so many salespeople don't give a shit, right? They're too busy trying to swindle you out of your money to think about building a long-term relationship and building, the entire brand. The reason I wanted to start out with sales is to help you understand how honesty can be used as a strategy. In order for it to be used as a strategy, though, you have to go beyond just being honest, and you have to point to the honesty. This is two different things, because it'd be one thing for her to say, yeah, some of these cookies are good and some of them are bad. Okay. But she didn't. She said, sometimes advertising can be misleading, and I don't want to mislead you. Not only am I being honest, but I'm trusting you with the truth that you will trust me in turn. And this is so powerful because it puts people into a trusting mindset. It gets them ready, right? If I say to you, hey, this is really hard for you to hear, but I got to tell you, you deserve the truth. Do you mind if I just, if I'm really straight with you and tell you what you need to hear? You're going to be like, yeah, of course, Peter. Yeah, no, tell me, I can take it, right? And now you're psychologically prepared. At what point are you going to be like, oh no, I can't be trusted with the truth, so don't tell me that. Yeah, no, I don't want that. Of course not. That's never going to happen, okay? Where we run into trouble is when we don't prepare people. We don't ask for permission. Instead, we just assault their ego with our opinion, and immediately they're put on the defensive. Gosh, speaking of this, and we'll get into management later, but I'm going to give you a sneak preview now. One of my guilty pleasures, okay, don't tell anyone outside of you and me, is Below Deck. Right, this is a show on Bravo, drama-filled escapade about people that work in the belly of a yacht, right? And they serve all these wealthy people that go on these yacht vacations. And inevitably, the chief steward, who's one of the officers there, takes care of the interior of the boat, is usually a pretty hard-edged person. They're pretty abrupt, and they're just not soft, fuzzy people. But they don't see themselves that way. Blind spot, right? Ego. So the problem is, in the first meeting with their underlings, they always say the same thing, and it drives me nuts. Hey, I'm going to be hard on you, but I'm not a bitch. Like, I promise I'm not a bitch. I'm not mean. Well, now you've set this expectation, and every time that chief steward is a bitch, the people lose credibility and trust because you said one thing and you did another. Let me tell you guys something. If that were me, the first thing I would say to them is, hey, everyone, so I am a nasty, nasty asshole. Like, oh, you are going to hate working for me. I can be brutal. I'm abrupt. I'm not nice. I give immediate feedback, and I expect you to not be offended. And gosh, I just want to be upfront with you right now because I don't want you to be offended. I don't mean to offend you. I'm just doing it for the sake of efficiency, and you don't have to like it, but I want you to be prepared. Now, guess what? Every time I'm nice, I get points. Every time I'm nice, they think to themselves, Oh, Peter's not that bad. He said he was such a mean person. He's a great guy, right? Don't be spreading that shit around, by the way. I have a reputation to uphold. But do you understand the point? This is being honest about people. If you're thinking about this as I'm saying it, you're realizing that I'm lying to them, right? I'm literally embellishing my style to mentally prepare them. That's not necessarily true, the words that are coming out of my mouth. But what's more honest? Setting expectations and meeting or exceeding them, or setting expectations and failing them? Okay, think about that when you're managing people. And we'll get to management a lot more later on. But for now, we're still in part 2. Now we're on chapter 6. And for those of you just joining, that's the wrong side of the book, Peter. That's the right side. For those of you just joining, please go pick up your copy of Honest to Greatness. It means the world to me. And, please do. We need all the help we can get to turn this into a movement. So Rosalie's asking, why is honesty so important to you? Rosalie, it wasn't. Earlier I told my story about how I never set out to write about honesty or speak about honesty or frankly even give a shit about honesty. That's the truth. I've had people overhear me doing these and they're like, Peter, you shouldn't say that. I'm like, it's true. I care about it for 2 reasons. One, philosophical. I think our society needs it. I think our society needs to be aware that the dishonesty that's inherent in politics and the private sector scandals and this whole pandemic mess of a mess, it's not sustainable. It creates distrust, and therefore people don't do what we need them to do. This pandemic's a perfect example. People have lied to us. We don't know who to trust. Now, guess what? We're not going to do anything people tell us to do, right? And you look at like COVID-19, yes, it's killed people. Yes, it's awful. And my heart goes out to anyone who has lost a family member or friend to COVID. It is terrible. The truth is, there are viruses out there that are more deadly, way more deadly, and more contagious, way more contagious. And when that one comes, we're not going to listen because we don't trust what happened with this pandemic. That's what I worry about. That's what I worry about. Okay. Rosalie, the second reason is because I'm frustrated that people don't fucking understand that this is the way to achieve results. They think they have to pretend to be someone else. They think they have to sweep things under the rug. And they don't get it. They don't get what all the CEOs in my book get, that not only is it the wrong way to do things because the truth is going to come out anyway, but you miss a massive opportunity to be honest. And use honesty as your wave to ride forward into a new, profitable, amazing future. And I'm just about to get into exactly that. So your question's perfect, because I want to tell you the story that comes out of chapter 6. Chapter 6 is on marketing, but even though it's about marketing, it really transcends leadership and management and sales, everything. And chapter 6 is about Domino's Pizza. The story of Russell Weiner, who's a CMO of Domino's Pizza. And I'm going to tell the little longer version today. I usually don't get a chance to. But in 2008, 2009, Domino's Pizza figured out it had a problem. Its customers were giving them feedback that their pizza, quite frankly, wasn't very good. And at this point, Domino's had choices. It could have just put out a new ad campaign and said, I'm being told I'm on a countdown for Instagram. So if you're watching me on Instagram, I'm going to have to reinitialize, but that's okay. We'll do that in a minute. The folks at Domino's had choices. They could have just said, hey, we've got a new imported Italian tomatoes in our sauce. So come back and try our pizza. It's awesome. They could have done that, right? That's sort of sweeping the issue around a little bit, but fine. But they didn't. Talk about the hourglass, right? They first got honest about the community. It was 2008, 2009, financial crisis. Once again, nobody knows who to trust. And in that environment, they said to themselves, we've got to get a lot more honest about what's going on in the world right now. What's happening with society. And, it was clear they were getting honest with and about the others, right? Their customers, their own customers were telling them things. And Russell Weiner, who's then the CMO, now president of Domino's, amazing guy. He said, we have all this customer feedback, but that's not going to be enough. He went and did surveys of the executive team to say, hey, what do you think of the pizza? Do you think it's any good? So clever. And he used that to get honest about themselves as an organization, because he said, look, guys and girls, of course, here's what the customers are saying. Here's what we think. Clearly, we're wrong. Clearly, we need to change. Okay. And the CEO, Dave Brandon, he was on his last year. Like he was about to leave. And he approved this incredible campaign that wasn't going to sweep things under the rug. Instead, they were going to be strategically honest. So he put the incoming CEO, J. Patrick Doyle, directly in the crosshairs when he authorized this campaign. And basically, the campaign was this, and I'm going to reinitialize you on Instagram here in a moment. Let me do that because I don't want to waste the kicker. Hold on. Oh, I wonder what happens when the timing runs out. Yeah, it ended. Share to IGTV. Oh, you poop. I'm just gonna post this and then we'll come back to this. That's how you all know it's live, watching me out there. But I left you at a cliffhanger, didn't I? With Domino's Pizza. Behind the book. I didn't know that Instagram only allowed you to do this for an hour. Did you all know that? I didn't know that. Okay, let's reinitialize this. Boom. All right, so we're now back up on Instagram, and we were talking about Domino's Pizza, right? So the outgoing CEO approves this campaign. The incoming CEO goes on national television, and he says, well, America, we're sorry, but turns out our pizza is terrible. You deserve better than that, and we're going to fix it. And they didn't just fix it. They brought cameras into the kitchen and filmed them creating new recipes. They brought cameras out to the houses of their customers and filmed them trying the new variations of pizza. Hey, do you like this? Is this better? What do you think? They posted all of those videos online for us to see. And if you had recognized that they were using honesty as a strategy to get honest with themselves about what needed to change and get honest with their customers about what they were doing about it, and you had bought Domino's Pizza stock at the moment when the CEO was on TV telling people that they suck, you would have had a 3,000% return over the next 10 years. Would have made you a millionaire, all by being honest. And that's what I mean by the loss in opportunity. If people don't realize that honesty is a strategy, it is the way to achieve the outcome. When you don't do that, you lose the opportunity. Can somebody tell me what happened with Volkswagen? They had their diesel emissions scandal a little while ago, a few years now, where they falsified all these reports about what their cars can do. What happened? I don't know. Maybe you know. But the point is, like, what a missed opportunity. They could have come out and done the same thing. Wow, we really suck. We messed that one up. That's really bad. And we understand we can't behave like that. We don't expect you to trust us on that. So why don't you come on in? We want you to watch our meetings. We want you to watch what we're doing on our assembly line and our quality control so that you can see what we're doing and that you can see we care and we're trying to fix this. I don't know if it's going to work. You don't have to forgive us. We can't make you. But this is the right thing to do, is a step in the right direction. That would have been so great, right? Now, you and I both know that didn't happen. I don't know what they did. Maybe they fixed it. Maybe they didn't. Clearly, somebody inside was like, "No, don't say anything. It'll blow over," right? What a missed opportunity for them to show us who they really are as a company. And by the way, once they take that direction, it's on the internet forever. And we can go and see what kind of company Volkswagen is, what kind of organization they are, what they stand for. Now, I don't know what they stand for. Sweeping shit under the rug, I guess. Sad. So that brings us to chapter 7. And for those of you just joining us, I'm giving a behind-the-scenes look at Honest to Greatness, how today's greatest leaders use brutal honesty to achieve massive success. If you have not picked up your copy already, please go to Amazon and buy a copy for you, a copy for your great Aunt Millie, and a copy for your least favorite person on earth who you know needs to be a lot more honest. Maybe just, package it anonymously so they don't get mad at you. Why? You think... What are you saying here? You think I'm dishonest? Is that why you gave me the book? No. You're great. You're doing fine. Okay. That brings us to chapter 7. This is Warren Buffett and Dan Hesse's chapter. So Dan Hesse's the former CEO of Sprint, another phenomenal guy, emailed me just to say, hey, Peter, awesome job. And I got some press that he had seen. Great guy. Now, unfortunately, our publicly traded financial system is set up on quarterly earnings, right? So CEOs have to make quarterly forecasts. How am we going to be doing in the next 3 months? Now, I don't even know what I'm going to be eating for dinner tomorrow night, never mind what my business is going to be doing in 3 months. So what this does is it actually sets up a very dangerous incentive for CEOs to lie about what's going on. And anyone who's studied accounting out there will tell you that accounting is an art, not a science, and that there are ways to manipulate the numbers to make quarterly earnings look really good. And there are a lot of folks out there, Warren Buffett included, myself included, who hate this whole idea. Like, it creates an incentive for people to lie, and it's extremely harmful. Dan Hesse at Sprint, he came into Sprint and he looked at what Sprint and Nextel had built in their merger. And he realized that the entire cellular infrastructure at Sprint would have to be ripped out and redone. Otherwise, Sprint would only survive for maybe 5 years, maybe 10, but it would eventually go obsolete. Now, Sprint's still alive today, right? Because Dan very heroically and against the wishes of his own investors said, look, we're doing this. We need to invest in the long term. Yes, it's going to be painful. Yes, I know we're almost bankrupt, but this is the way that we think long term and we survive. And because he thought long term, he did fix the infrastructure at Sprint. He did go into debt, and he pulled it out over many years, by the way. And over those years, because he was willing to be honest about what it took and honest about what needed to change at Sprint, like the infrastructure, he went from last to first year after year in the American Customer Satisfaction Index, winning award after award for treating customers well and onboarding customers. And he revived that business just by not doing the thing where he sort of hobbles along as best as possible, collects his bonus, and sails off into the sunset. No, he did the hard thing, the long-term thing. And by playing the long game, that's how he was able to bring Sprint back from bankruptcy to be a major telecom player against Verizon, AT&T, much bigger competitors. This is nothing short of a miracle, folks. Now, ironically, Warren Buffett uses the same strategy. People don't realize about Warren Buffett, that man actually does very little. I actually got to meet Warren Buffett one time. We did some work for him, opening one of his new furniture stores. And I accidentally served as his bodyguard. That was not intentional. And my figure skater frame is only about 5'7". But he insisted that he did not need security and that it would all be fine. Mind you, we had like 1,000 people at this event we were throwing and doing all the PR and event planning for. And he shows up, and you would have thought that Michael Jackson walked into the building. I mean, people were like throwing underwear at the guy, right? And so I had to sort of jump in because I was producing the event and be his de facto bodyguard, which was a lot of fun. It's a good thing I had that black belt in Taekwondo, so it was fine. But the best guy, and people don't realize he does very little. He literally like spends a lot of days reading, like chatting with people and going to events, shaking hands. Well, back when we used to do that barbarian thing called shaking hands. And he waits. He's patient. He's playing the long game. He makes investments for like 20-year horizons, 50-year, 100-year horizons. He asks like, what is this business going to be doing in 50 years? All right, cool. I think I'll buy it. And then he buys it, and then he does nothing for like another decade, right? Thinking long term, that's part of being honest. You know, part of being honest is asking ourselves, especially now, pandemic, what kind of business do I need to build that's going to survive long term? What kind of life do I need to build that is going to make me happy and fulfilled long term? So often we make short-term decisions. So often. And you know, I'll be honest and vulnerable with you. You know, this book to me was a long-term investment. This cost me thousands of hours, tens of thousands of dollars, time away from my wife, time away from my fat fluffy dog who misses me. He's a good boy. And I did it because once I'm an author, right? I'm going to be an author forever. Yes, it's hard. In the short term, it sucks, but I would have it forever. Luckily, that's how I think. It's how I thought about going back to school, get an MBA. I had built $1 million company and then went back to get an MBA. Why did I do that? Because now I will always have an MBA from Columbia, right? I will always have an Ivy League MBA. That doesn't go out of style. You know, that's a long-term investment. Again, time away from my family, money, more money than you would believe. So, I ask you in your life, right? In your life and your business, of course, how are you doing things today for the long term? Because if you want to be honest, you need to think long term. I want to tell just one more story out of chapter 7, which is a story of America's test kitchen. I don't know if any of you are chefs out there and like cooking. I eat really well. If any of you want to cook for me, I'll come over your house and eat. I like to eat very much. I do not like to cook or clean. It's a weird thing. I just don't. So I try to avoid those activities. But apparently there are people who actually do like to cook and clean. I don't know any of these people, but I hear they're out there, and they watch America's Test Kitchen. It's a massive media company. Now, America's Test Kitchen reviews kitchen products. Makes sense, right? They're testing pots and pans and like banging them with boulders and shit to see if they break and how well they do and last. Now, most media companies are set up with an advertising model. So if I want to, I make a pot, right? I'm Martha Stewart, and I want my Martha Stewart pots up there. I'm probably going to call America's Test Kitchen and say, hey, I'd like you to place some advertising. I want to reach all the chefs that are on your list and watching your YouTube channel. So can I do that? Now, if Martha Stewart asked America's Test Kitchen if she can advertise her pots and pans, America's Test Kitchen is going to say, thank you, but no thank you. They don't take money from advertisers. That's not their business model. And the reason why is because they thought long-term, and they realized, hey, if we build a company in which we are taking money from you and reviewing your product, that creates a pretty poor incentive, doesn't it? Right? Now we have an incentive to make you happy, maybe rate your product a little better than it deserves. Very bad. That's what happens with our news media today, people. Their money is predicated on us finding their news entertainment, the operative word being entertainment, compelling. If they can compel us to watch, compel us to click, that's how they make money, by getting our attention, not by telling us the truth. I want you all to realize that. We covered that in part 1 for those of you who are just joining us. America's Test Kitchen, that's an honest company, a company that understands what is a sustainable business model. Oh gosh, next up, the Ritz-Carlton. That is such a phenomenal chapter. Folks, for those of you who are just joining this massive, honest or dishonest, however you think, telethon, welcome. I'm Peter Kozadoy. Hopefully you realize that already since you're on my channel. And we're talking about honest to greatness. I'm taking everyone through this labor of love. It is launch week here. And, luckily, Honest to Greatness premiered at number 1 on Amazon for hot new releases in 2 categories. It's so amazing. And I've really been overwhelmed by the support people have shown. I want to take this moment to give a special shout out to Miss Patricia Burgess, who has been just a phenomenal fan and helping me out in so many ways as a volunteer without me even asking. That's incredible. I also want to shout out Greg Brunette, who created a t-shirt with my book cover on it so he could post on social media. That's a friend. I'm just so grateful to all of you and to Rick and Sean and everyone else who's been helping me out. Thank you to my business partner, Chris, who's been holding it down while I have been clearly distracted all week. And, my entire team, Gary and Ryan and Spencer, my amazing art director, Jem, did a lot of the art in the book. He's incredible. I couldn't have done it without these people. And of course, my wife for allowing me to chatter on at 800 decibels in the room while she's trying to do work that is, trust me, much more important than I do. So yeah, she's amazing. I'm way over chicked, by the way, for any of you who've ever met my wife, you will agree. Let's move on to chapter 8. And hopefully you're all I hope you all just love these stories as much as I do. And there's so many more. I mean, I'm bouncing around, of course, but there's so many more stories in these books that are just so inspirational. It shows you that honesty is not just this touchy-feely, let's be honest crap, but it actually works. It really works. Let's see. Someone's asking, have you ever received a negative feedback for your honesty? So yes, I was voted most likely to continue being a total asshole in high school and as a young 20-year-old, right? I had to learn that honesty does not mean just saying whatever the hell you want to people. That actually is hurtful. That harms people. That is not what brutal, strategic honesty means. I'm going to break my whole setup here, right? This is about using honesty strategically. And sometimes, and I had to learn this the hard way. In fact, most times, we don't want to be brutally honest directly with someone, right? They don't like that. Their egos cannot handle it. Study after study has shown that people respond much better to positive feedback than negative feedback. Now, I want to pause here and help you all understand that that result is because of our delicate egos. It is always faster and more easy to give someone direct feedback. That gets to the point a lot faster. In fact, in a couple chapters, we're going to talk about the largest hedge fund in the world and how they use brutal honesty with each other to achieve fast outcomes, right? But to your point, I'm sorry, I can't see your name, but you'd asked the question about negative feedback about honesty. Most people can't take it. Now you can ask permission. Hey, do you mind if I give you some really direct feedback? I don't want to offend you, of course, but I find it more easy and you look like you can take it. And they'll say, oh yeah. They're going to say, oh yeah, I can take it. Yeah, I can take it. You give me that feedback. It's fine. So you've primed them psychologically, but sometimes we need to give them feed forward. Okay. Feed forward is a technique that I talk about in part 3. We'll get there. If I get there, gosh, 3:18, I got to move. And feed forward goes like this. Instead of feedback, where I'm critiquing something you've already done, feed forward is painting a vision of the future. So I might say, oh, that's so cool. Thank you for showing that to me. Gosh, it makes me wonder if you changed these colors over here and that. What do you think are like 2 other options we could do over there? Paint me like 3 different, let's brainstorm on 3 different options and let's just play them out. Pros, cons, you argue one side, I argue the other. See if they'd be better. What do you think of that? And what you're doing is you're welcoming in a future state that has not happened yet. It's nobody's fault, right? It's just all potential. Very different than assaulting something you've done and now it's your fault. Very difficult. So yeah, I joke that if I can learn what honesty really means, if I can learn how to embrace vulnerability and transparency and all that happy horse shit and realize that it actually does work and write a book about it, if I can do it, anybody can. And I hope you're seeing my own honesty about that as the point in all this, that if we get more aware of honesty and dishonesty and how it leads us astray and how it can produce outcomes if we understand how to use it, how to harness the power, then you can turn this book into a weapon to change your life, I have. If I can do it, you can. All right, chapter 8. I'm going to move a little faster because I'm going to keel over now. I wonder if they do, you think like if I order drinks to my desk here, to my studio, they would deliver? Somebody start an app for that. That would make this a lot better, wouldn't it? Okay, chapter 8 was about the Ritz-Carlton. Now, the Ritz-Carlton got honest in one very important way, and they instituted what I call a waterfall culture. Okay, this is chapter 8. Talk about a waterfall culture. Here's what happened. The Ritz-Carlton sat around, and the executives said to themselves, how much power do we have over what happens at our properties around the world? And they thought about it for a moment, and they said, gee, I don't think we have any power over what happens in our properties around the world. And then they thought, okay, well, if we don't, because we're not there, we're just not there, who does? Well, our doormen and receptionists, chefs, waiters and waitresses, they're the ones that have the power. See, the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain, they don't hire just anyone. They hire leaders. And the reason they hire leaders is because they empower their leaders to take care of customers. Because the executives can't. The executives have zero power, zero, over the customer experience. The people on the front line do. And because the people on the front line do, they trust them wholeheartedly. They build leadership positions within their teams. And in fact, at the Ritz-Carlton, every single employee can spend up to $2,000 per customer if it's going to improve their experience with no prior approval required. Now, how's that for trust? How different is that from a lot of the cultures today in which it is command and control? You don't have an opinion. It's my opinion as the boss, and you're going to do what I tell you, and I'm going to micromanage the shit out of you. And raise your hand if you like that. Nobody likes that, right? Why do we do it? It's damaging. People leave. At the Ritz, they have a waiting list for people to work there, to be doormen and waitresses. Why? Because once you're in, you're the boss. You're the leader. We trust you. We're going to give you the frameworks and the tools and the culture code, and you've got to abide by what we believe. But when you do, you're in charge. That's the truth. That's how waterfall culture works. And the reason I call it that is because it redefines what managers do. The new role of managers is to do one thing and one thing only, which is to empower the next level. to do their job really, really well? Do you have the tools you need? Do you have the support you need? Do you have the access you need? Great. My job is done. I'm not going to tell you anything else because you got this. It's much more of a coaching role. By the way, it's a lot easier. I wish managers out there would just shut the fuck up and do less. That's what they really need to do. Not spend their time micromanaging and worrying over every little thing. Just hire great people, let them do their job. And by the way, great people will go to work for you if you're honest about that and what people like and don't like and how they perform, and you let them do their job. It's circular logic. That's why I do not lie when I say this book cuts across sales, marketing, culture, recruiting. How much easier is it to recruit if you're honest and you have an honest culture? So, that's an amazing chapter, chapter 8. Chapter 9, if you have not believed so far that honesty can produce results and honesty can produce profits, money, my favorite word, money. I just love to say it. Then chapter 9 is for you. Because in chapter 9, I profile Ray Dalio, who is the founder of Bridgewater Associates. Now, many of you may never have heard of Bridgewater Associates, but Bridgewater is the largest hedge fund in the world by far. I mean, they have more assets under management, like billions and tens of billions, than their closest competitor is like 100 billion back, right? And the way they figured this out was actually Ray, the founder, got into a lot of hot water when he was like almost exactly my age, actually. He made a prediction about the market that it would turn one way. And he got his entire company and all his clients ready. And he went on national TV and the market's going to turn, get ready. And it did exactly the opposite. And he was left holding the bag on, let's just say, a lot of money. This now billionaire had to borrow like $4,000 from his dad just to like put food on the table for his family. And what he decided was that he, after that, was never going to get into a position where he was lying to himself and didn't even realize it. He decided, I don't care who's right. I don't care if I'm right. I just want to make sure that we do the right thing, that we know what is correct. And he surrounded himself with people and he said, people, I need you to tell me when I'm full of shit. I need you to tell me when I'm lying so that we get to the truth no matter what. And when he did that, you can imagine if you have a bunch of folks sitting around who are not afraid of politics and ego, who are asked and even judged on how direct their feedback is, how fast it's delivered, how quickly we get to the truth. Isn't that who you want managing your money? Not people that are bound in their own psychology, but folks who are open-minded enough to admit, like, no, we probably need to be really brutally honest with each other. In fact, his entire culture is based on, literally, he calls it radical truth and radical transparency. And it is radical and it can be brutal. Talk about glassdoor.com. Take a look at some of the reviews of Bridgewater Associates online. But what happens over time is Bridgewater is very honest about who it is. They're not trying to hide it. They're like, we're a brutal culture. We're going to tear you down. We're going to tell you you're wrong. We're going to tell you you suck. But if you like that and you can adapt and you want to know how to improve yourself and you want to know where you're wrong, you're going to love this. And what happens is, 25% of people that come in leave, but the ones who stay love it. They wouldn't work anywhere else. And we wonder why, why would they be the biggest hedge fund in the world? I don't know, because they've eliminated all the BS, right? They're just not stuck in it. They're willing to get to what's true. Oh gosh, we are hour and a half in. Welcome if you're just joining us. We're walking through Honest to Greatness, new book just out this week. We're in day 4 of the launch. I'm losing my voice. I have a feeling that a martini will bring it back later. At least we're going to test that theory. And we're on to chapter 10. Chapter 10 is fantastic. I lay out all of the isms. How many are there? All 19 isms of the culture code of Quicken Loans. Quicken Loans was private, just went public a few weeks ago, maybe even a couple weeks ago. Jay Farner, CEO, another fantastic guy. They have a culture code and rules around how they behave and what they believe, and they call it their isms. There are 19 of them. They've actually changed over time, and they continue to change. But, the short story is Quicken Loans invented Rocket Mortgage, right? Rocket Mortgage quickly became the number one mortgage provider in the entire industry. Quicken Loans, throttled, just like trounced. It's much bigger mortgage providers like Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Why didn't they discover Rocket Mortgage? Like, why was Quicken, the smaller private company, the one to do it? Now, many of you are thinking, well, because they were smaller, right? Smaller companies, more nimble. It's not as simple as that, okay? Not as simple as that. Let me read you just a couple of these isms, right? The number one, always raising our level of awareness. That's a good one, right? Aware, be honest. Let's have another one. They're so good. It's not about who is right. It's about what is right. Ism number 7. I just love that. Same thing as Ray Dalio Bridgewater, right? Listen, you read this book, the people who are reading this book they're gonna agree with me when I say this. There are themes. Honesty runs in themes. It's not about who is right. It's not about ego. It's about what is right. Obsessed with finding a better way. There's got to be a better way. Ism number 5. Amazing. Where is it? Number 12. A penny saved is a penny. And what they basically mean by that is we're going to save a penny here, save a penny there. So what? We're out to make transformational outcomes. We're out to dominate the industry. So what's a penny? If we have to invest, we invest. We eat our own dog food. We eat our own dog food. We do what we say we're going to do. If we recommend it, we use it. I love that. And number 19, the last one. This, in my opinion, is one of the most important. Say yes before no. Say yes before no. Gosh, for any of you who have ever worked in a company, in a corporation, how many times have you had a great idea and brought it up to the gatekeepers and they've closed the gate? No, we can't do that. No. Quicken says yes before no. Say yes. Then figure out if we need to then say no for a really good, logical, fact-based reason, not an ego reason. And this is why, you can imagine, right? Somebody, and I don't remember the whole story because I wrote it, so why would I know it? I think it was an intern who said to them, like, why do we kill a tree every time we get a mortgage? It doesn't make any sense. Why don't we just do it on our phone? And the people at Quicken were like, well, came from an intern, but we don't care who it is that has the idea. And we say yes before no, has to do with mortgages, seems reasonable. Yeah, go do that. See how it works. At Bank of America, I was probably like, ooh, gosh, that seems risky. Let's do 18 data analyses of that and then get the buy-in of idiot number 5, who's up and promoted to a VP that never should have been there, but his uncle's in a higher position. Oh my gosh. The BS that goes on, not at Quicken. And it's just phenomenal. That's how they were able to create Rocket Mortgage. And so the framework for this, I call the flawed diamond. I'm going to show you that, right? The flawed diamond. And the flawed diamond basically describes how, if you think about how a diamond works, light comes in from the top, bounces around the bottom, comes back out. The one thing you do not want in a diamond is what? A flaw, right? You don't want a flaw in the diamond. And what Jay did, what Quicken Loans does, is they remove the flaws from the diamond so that when information comes in from their prospects and customers and managers and that, it doesn't get stopped. It flows through the organization. And if it makes any sense at all, then they'll say, yeah, maybe that'll work. Maybe not. I don't know. Go test it. Go try it. Say yes before no. So powerful. How many more chapters do we have in part 2? I want to be cognizant of the time. I've got one more. Oh, this is the Johari window chapter. That is so exciting. All right, we're going to do chapter 11, and then we're on to part 3. Okay. How many of you know who Bethany Frankel is? I was with Bethany a few years ago. We're at Adweek, New York, and we're backstage, and I was interviewing her for an article I was writing for Inc. magazine, and she's telling me all about her journey. She was, in her own words, a broke 30-something living in a closet of an apartment in Manhattan, wondering how the heck she's going to make a name for herself. And from that moment, fast forward, she ended up becoming not only a real housewife of New York, but also parlaying that into a 9-figure alcohol business. How did she do it? Well, she has this mantra that I have named. It's not hers. This is what I've coined to describe it. And her mantra is ignorance is power, knowledge is bliss. Ignorance is power, knowledge is bliss. She is obsessed with what she doesn't know. And she's very honest about it. She's like, there's a lot I don't know. I'm pretty stupid, and I'm not ashamed to say that. So I'm always trying to figure out what I don't know. Sounds exactly like Ray Dalio. So she's telling me this backstage, and then she goes on stage, and I'm watching her on this panel, and she was up there, only woman, and all these like old white dudes, right, ad execs, and she stops the panel when she hears this word, this marketing term. She literally like gets out of her chair and she's like, stop, everything stop. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. And you can imagine that someone who goes through life continually in the operating system of, I have no fucking idea, but I'm sure shit gonna ask and find out. Imagine how much you would learn by just having that very honest approach. That's why someone like her is learning so much faster than most people. That's why she's able to adopt all these things quickly and evolve and change and earn the kind of success that she's earned. And the framework I want to point out to you is the Johari window. The Johari window. The Johari window was created by a couple of psychologists in 1955, actually. This is not new. Oh, how we've forgotten it. And it describes 4 quadrants of your mindset and awareness. There's the unknown, which are things you don't know about yourself, but nobody else knows them about yourself, so it doesn't really matter. There's the facade, where you know things about you, but other people don't, so you're putting on this sort of show in one way or another. There's the arena. That's the quadrant where, I know something about me, you know the same thing about me, I'm late, you know it, it's all good. And then there's the blind spot. And as leaders, we need to be obsessed with what's in the blind spot. That's what Bethany was obsessed with. And in the blind spot are things that you don't know about yourself, but everyone else already does. That's so dangerous because maybe I'm thinking, yeah, sometimes I'm late, but I'm not late all the time and nobody cares. And you're thinking, I hate that you're late all the time. It's damaging. It creates a sense that you don't know what you're doing. That's a blind spot. What lurks in our blind spot is so dangerous. And step number 1 is just being aware that we have a blind spot, literally. I mean, the little lies we tell ourselves that we don't even realize we're telling half the time. They're so damaging because they're a habit. They're an addiction. And for any of you who have ever gotten over an addiction, what is the very first step of beating an addiction? It's admitting you have a problem, admitting that you are a no good, dirty liar, and that you have things in your blind spot. Once you figure that out, once you figure out that you have things in your blind spot, then the question is, okay, what's in it and how do I figure that out? The only way I have found to figure out what's in your blind spot is to get together with a group of people that you love and respect and try to unearth by reflecting, by sharing, by being vulnerable and open, what might be in there. And, that's why I run a forum for entrepreneurs. It's our leadership group. It is the most powerful peer experience on the planet. And I can say that with confidence because with 100% confidentiality, we come together and we literally lay out what's like really, really, really going on in our business, personal, and family lives. And only by doing that and then having people reflect it back to you. Peter, I heard you talk about this big issue and I heard you use words like such and I'm thinking, oh gosh, wow, did I say that? Is that really what I'm thinking? Is it really what I'm feeling? I didn't even realize that about myself. That's the number one way to explore and open up your blind spot. You can't do it alone. You can't do it alone sitting in a room. Otherwise you would have done it, right? None of you walk around thinking like, God, I'm such a terrible person. I guess I need to change everything I think about myself. No, you walk around with a prevailing mindset thinking that you are naturally correct. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe it's in your blind spot. But my point is you can't dive into your own mind to see what might be leading you astray. Only way to do it is with others. I repeat that all the time. Bethany's modus operandi, ignorance is power, knowledge is bliss, because it's so true. If we can all realize that and live by it, we will be so much better off. So that is the conclusion of part 2. Some powerful stories. I mean, obviously there's so much more. in the book, and there are all kinds of sub stories I tell off the main stories, and we dive into the frameworks and the techniques. If you have not gotten your copy of Honest to Greatness, please do. Please go grab it off of Amazon or wherever books are sold. Buy one for you, buy one for Great Aunt Betty, buy one for the most honest and dishonest people you know. Send them to your friends and colleagues and clients. Your clients will appreciate it. Hey, how about this? Send one to all of your customers and say, hey, we believe in this. We believe in honesty. We want you to know it. And we hope you enjoy this book. What a powerful message that would be. What a great relationship builder that is. Of course, it's self-serving because then you get to buy a lot of copies of my book. But at least I'm being honest about it. So that brings us to part 3. We're going to kind of skip through part 3 because I've got another engagement coming up. And I think I need surgery on my larynx at this point to make sure I'm talking okay. Now, in part 3, we get political in order to get unpolitical. What do I mean by that? And I don't mean politics and like government. I mean like political, like how do we manipulate, that is the word, people around us to get them to do what we want to do. And it turns out we can do it by using honesty, right? Strategic, brutal honesty. And the reason why that's important to note is because, as I said earlier, as one of the Facebook users asked me, it's like, well, don't you ever get pushback for being brutally honest with people? Yes. That's why we don't want to just be brutally honest with people. We need to be honest about them, about what it takes for them to change. Let me give you an example. I've gotten on some radio and TV interviews this week talking about the mask debate, right? Should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks? And the thing is this. If you have a friend who doesn't want to wear a mask, and you do, the last thing you want to do is go offend their ego. Say, hey, are you a dumbass? Why aren't you wearing a mask? I can't believe you. How dare you? In what world are they going to be like, oh gosh, you're right. Thank you for telling me like that. I never thought about that. Now I'm going to wear one. Like, doesn't happen. That's not how people work. It's not what makes people change. Instead, we need to work with them. We need to, one of the things I talk about in part 3 is selling downhill. What do I mean by that? Well, we're always going to sell better. And by sell, that could be sell a product or sell your wife on where you want to eat dinner tonight. You always want to sell into a person's prevailing belief system, right? Downhill. They already think these things, so we're going to move with them, okay? Because otherwise, you're just assaulting their ego and telling them that everything they think is wrong, and nobody likes that. But if you can get into it, hey, I see that you don't want to wear a mask. Do you mind telling me about that? I'd love to understand how you form that opinion, what you're reading, what data you're looking at. Just be really helpful to know. I never know when I might want to change my opinion, which needs to be true. That's part of honesty. And once you do that, you've opened them up to sharing with you. You have brought down any ego wall, and you're now in a fruitful discussion about what opinion should we form? What data and facts should we be looking at? And together, you can arrive to some common ground over a open-ended, open-minded discussion. Unfortunately, that's not how people behave in our society. They're too busy going to Facebook and Twitter and stuffing their opinions down the throats of others. And I think you can all realize that that doesn't work. We need to be honest about the fact that that does not work, and we need to stop doing it. It's damaging to ourselves, to our relationships, to the other people around us, and to our society at large. In fact, I talk a lot about change in part 3. In chapter 13, I talk about the DVFR formula. It's right here, where I define, what does D mean? What does V mean? So, this formula is not mine, but it's a wonderful way to understand, how people and organizations change. And basically, the equation is D times V times F is greater than R, where D is dissatisfaction with the current state, vision for a future state, first steps, what's the process to get there? And if I tell you, hey, we are not happy with the way things are going, it could be so much better, and here's how, and here's what I think we need to do to get there. And if I can unite us around that, then I can overcome our resistance to change. Resistance to change is very strong. We humans do not like to do things that are different. We're habitual creatures. We like to do the same crap over and over, think the same things, believe the same shit. We need to get honest about that. And if we're trying to change ourselves and those around us, we need to sell downhill, even if we're trying to trick ourselves into doing something, okay? I talk about feedback and feed forward on page Page 209, I show you how to use feed forward, what all the exact words and phrases are to help you use it. I talk about waterfall culture and how to employ a waterfall culture, because I can't say this enough, in my workshop I do with leaders, I go into CEO groups, I do workshops around this stuff. And I tell them up front, listen, honesty will change your life, change your business. It'll change your recruiting, your sales, your productivity, your innovation. And they say, Peter, I can't do all that. Like, chill out. We don't need your own. I thought you were the honesty guy. We don't need your own false advertising. And by the end, they get it. By the end, they realize that honesty is the root of all this. That's why I wrote a book about honesty. I wrote a book about honesty because it's a root cause. It is the root cause of all the crap we see out there. I remember coming in too late as a marketing agency to, these really big companies. And it was too late. The executives had already decided with their own biases and ego to go in the wrong direction. And they were like, here, make this work. It's like, I can make it work, but damn, guys, like, this is awful. This isn't true. Your customers they're not going to care about this. How many times, gosh, I can't tell you that I've been in meetings, but your customers, they're not going to care about this. Oh, yes, they will, Peter. Okay, but we already did all the research and look at the results. Whatever. That's why I wrote a book about honesty. That's why I'm passionate about working with leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, because I need to get to them at that level to help them make transformations in their mindset. That allows them to make trickle-down decisions that help their companies. The root is honesty. Oh, gosh. I talk about page 214, how to use honesty to solve a crisis. Of course that worked. We talked about Domino's Pizza earlier and how they literally came out with it, used honesty and transparency, used it, not, we're going to be honest now, but like used it as a strategy to create industry dominating results. And they're still doing it. 12 years later, Domino's Pizza is still crushing it because they're willing to get honest. Oh gosh, chapter 14, values hierarchy, right? For any of you who have never done a values hierarchy, not your core values, but your core values in order of what you think are important to you and how you act, that is such an incredible opportunity for you to understand yourself better and understand the people around you better. Any conflict that you have, it all comes back to what you value versus what someone else values. And I'll tell you straight up, in my values hierarchy, service is actually higher than honesty. What that means is if I can serve someone else, protect them, make them better by lying, I will do it. I will do it. And I understand that about myself, right? That I will lie to help someone else. And to someone else, that would be egregious. They would never do that. For them, honesty is higher than service. They would never lie no matter what. It's so important for us to understand not only what's in our values hierarchy, but what the order is. Because once you do it for yourself, you will do it in your head for others. You'll wonder, wow, what does that person believe that's different from me? Obviously something different. Now, people are telling you what they value. They're telegraphing it for you, but we're not listening because we're so busy in our own damn heads, right? Part of being honest is getting out of our heads and into the minds of others and asking ourselves, are they revealing a blind spot to me right now? Are they showing me what they value? Because don't ignore that, don't ignore that. If someone says, I'm a liar, and then they lie, you're really going to get mad at them? They told you what they value. They told you who they were. I would argue that's actually integrity. Someone tells you that they lie and they're consistent about it. They have plenty of integrity, just not maybe the integrity you want. Okay. This all comes back to core values. And once you see the world in terms of core values, you won't unsee it. Just like honesty. Once you see the hourglass of honesty at work and these stories, you'll be watching the news and you'll be like, oh my gosh, honesty. You'll be listening to, some debate, or you'll be reading on social media, honesty. Someone failed to get honest here on some level, and that's why there's conflict. The conflict resolution piece, I'm on page 228. The heading is getting honest with yourself means reinventing yourself. I just love that because unless we come back to it over and over and over again, right? Unless we come back to the honesty piece and understand how it wreaks havoc in our lives, we'll fail to reinvent ourselves. We will fail to get better. We'll fail to evolve into the leaders that you can be And I know you can be. I don't even know you, but I can tell you, whoever's watching this, like, you get honest with yourself about who you really are, what you really want, what you really believe in, you'll change your life. Or you'll keep sitting in your own bullshit. But either way, at least you'll be aware that you're sitting in your own crap, right? Oh, finally, one of the most important parts of this, chapter 15 is the last chapter. And I talk about how to use honesty, whether you're an employee on the front lines, you have no formal power. What do you do? You're a middle manager, very little formal power. What do you do? And I want to tell you two things. The first is, do not go it alone. Don't walk into your CEO's office with all kinds of crazy ideas and say, you're wrong and I'm right. That doesn't work. Doesn't work. Instead, use a coalition. Use a coalition of support. Gather people to help you. A group of people who say, hey, we're not being honest about these things. I think we need to change. That's very hard to ignore. Number two, don't just be a group of people with an opinion, be a group of people with data. Now, leaders love to follow the pack. They love to look around at what their competitors are doing. Great. Give them the book. Hey, here's what all these other companies are doing. Here's how they're using honesty to thrive. Take a look at the data, see what you think. Go to Just Capital, go to the Just 100, which we talked about earlier. Look at all these companies that are getting an 8% higher return on equity by being more honest and transparent. Maybe there's a case here. Leaders respond to that. Oh, other people are doing it? Okay, I guess I'll do it too. It's crappy, right? And it doesn't make them a leader for thinking that way. It's a very dishonest way to think, but you can use it to your advantage. So use data. Go together and use data. Those are just two of many techniques that I have in chapter 15 for you. And that brings us to the conclusion. Why did I write a book about honesty? Why did I write a book about honesty? As I told you earlier, I never set out to. This has surprised even me. If you had told 24-year-old Peter you're going to write a book about honesty, I would have told you you're full of shit. I don't care about honesty. I care about results, and honesty produces results. It'll produce results in your business. It'll produce results in your life. No matter who you are, what you do, what you love, doesn't matter. It all comes back to honesty. But more important than that, that's why I wrote a book about honesty. But why I ended up being so proud of it is because honesty is sustainable. What we have now is not. What we have now in our society is not sustainable. We cannot keep going with scandal after scandal, and we don't know who to trust. And we're doing, 10 different things during a pandemic because we can't get our act together and act as a united, team because we don't know who to trust. Right? I don't blame anyone. Well, I blame our leaders, but I don't blame anyone. Of my neighbors or friends or family for making decisions that they're making based on whatever they're reading or looking at, because we don't know. And without a return to honesty, without a return to transparency, our society will continue to get worse. If we don't get honest about the big things we're faced with, not only just in politics and the pandemic, but racism, gender issues, and all of these things, it's time. It's time that we get honest about it. And until we get honest about it, nothing's going to change. I hope that you pick up a copy of Honest to Greatness. I so appreciate you being here with me to listen in. This has been like a 2-hour marathon, so I definitely earned my martini tonight. But I hope you enjoy this book. I hope you read it, of course, at least once. But maybe I had someone say, like, Peter, I'm going to pull this out every year. Remind myself to be honest with myself. And I said, thank you. That's amazing. That's an amazing compliment. And this work's never done, right? I'm not the most honest person on earth. I'm not the pious author that wrote this. That's not what this is about. This is about recognizing that we are all a bunch of no good, dirty liars. And unless we get on the journey to becoming aware of honesty and to harnessing the power of honesty, then we will never get out of the ruts that we are all in, both as individuals and as a society. Folks, thank you so much. Go to Amazon or wherever books are sold and pick up your copy of Honest to Greatness. It's been amazing to hang out with you for the past couple of hours. And please go to Amazon, leave a review. If you love it, leave a great review. If you hate it, leave a great review. You get to be honest about it. How's that? Fair. All right, folks, until next time, I'm Peter Kozodoy, and thank you all for being honest.